Well, hey everybody, it's Chuck. Welcome back. I know it's been a while since I've made a video, but there's just not a whole lot of beekeeping videos to make in the dearth here in Zone 9B. But I decided to get off my rear and go ahead and talk about what's going on and maybe what's coming up here in the fall. And specifically what those of you that live in Zone 9B like I do might want to start cluing off of right now. Many of you know I'm a big advocate of using hive scales. I've got a lot of Broodminder branded scales on my hives that measure the weight of the colony continuously, so you can sort of see whether they're adding weight or removing weight, or maybe even if they swarmed if you're looking at small numbers. And historically, the month of October 1st through the 31st, is our fall flow. It's a small little flow. Typically, the yellow flowers are the indicator. And here's one of my indicators here in my backyard. And this is the golden rain tree. I don't know if you can see that at the resolution I have now, and especially in this morning light, but the golden rain tree is popping right now, and the bees love it. The goldenrod, of course, is another one that pops this time of year, and it's pretty easy to see in the ditches or railroad tracks or anywhere else you might be. Those flowers, those yellow flowers, typically bloom at the same time. All around the country, everybody's got different timing and seasons, and the plants locally adapt. But here, when the rain tree blooms, there's a little bit of pollen coming from the goldenrod, and there's some pollen coming off the rain tree and other flowers that are blooming right now to start adding weight. And to support that point, I want to show you what happened here on my scales. So as I talk through this, I'm going to try to show you some images here. In late September, there was a drastic increase of the net weight change of my hives. And then it started raining here at the beginning of October, and it just plateaued. And that's what happens to flows, because it's based off of the foraging ability of the bees. So anyway, that's where we are here right now. We had a drastic, quick increase in late September when we had some good dry weather, maybe an early bloom, and then it slowed off. So we'll see if the weather clears. It's kind of cloudy and overcast today and drizzly, so this video might even have some rain in it. But what I figured I would do is first start off this video giving you that tip here in Zone 9B. We're in our fall flow right now. They're adding weight. You have some decisions to do with this. This honey for me here in Jacksonville is very dark, almost molasses colored honey, not very light like the clover and the holly and the things we get in the spring. So it's something that a lot of people love the flavor of, but it's a distinctly different color here in Jacksonville for me. I'm going to take you around with me today. I've got a few little things, ideas I'm working on in my head, and I want to show you about. And as you know, I've been working on mite resistance, Varroa-sensitive queens. I did some queen rearing a few weeks ago before I kind of left town, and I put a bunch of queens in, and of course my mating success rate was very low. Very low, meaning like less than 50% came back. And yeah, there's a little sprinkle happening right now, just light enough for me to keep filming. And as I went through to check those matings, it was about 50%. So I've consolidated those, and I'll show you in the apiary here. I've consolidated most of them into 5-frame nukes because it's too late to get another round going and to get anything mated. Something might happen, but the drone population is just low enough. And the queens that were actually mated here might not be well mated. They may only be like 1-year queens, but they're going to get these colonies through the winter. I will do Harbo assays on everything that was remated. And it's also time for me to, follow up on some of the Harbos that I have done to double check with, whether or not they're holding their mites at bay. There was one hive over here that had a mite check of 0 when I was doing my Harbo assay, and I went through and I got a Harbo score of 0, which means it has no mite resistance, but it had 0 mites in it. And I'm like, I haven't treated in 7 weeks. What's going on? But I went back and did a mite check in this hive yesterday. The Harbo 0, 10 mites. So here in 3 weeks, it has gone from 0 mites to 10 mites on a Harbo 0 queen. So you could argue that the assay did its job. It told me that there were no mite resistance because there was mites in the brood, but the mite check didn't give me all of the information. So that just goes to say, mite checks are a data point. It is an indicator. A high mite count is a strong signal data point, meaning you've definitely got mites, but a low mite wash has a lot of false positive opportunities that we need to consider and understand. It's good for the time being, but it might not be good long term, so you can't sit on your laurels. So I'm actually at the point going, I can't requeen this hive. I want to keep the bees alive through the winter. So now I'm at the point of saying, I think I actually need to treat this hive so that it will make it through the winter. So I'm probably going to put some oxalic acid in there. I thought I was done using oxalic, but I truly do think you need to treat the hives, where you need to keep the hives alive through the winter with the queen that you've got. Otherwise, I won't have those bees in the spring. Got a little sting on the cheek while I'm talking to you. All right, so the bees are a little bit buzzy. I'm in front of them. Let me show you a few other things I've got going on. All right, everybody, we're in the barn shed, and I want to take you to the observation hive. So here's where we are, and I just want to give you a little bit of history. So I use my observation hive, both I love watching the bees, but secondly, because it also is the best indicator of what's going on inside of an undisturbed hive. I did have to requeen this as part of my mite-resistant queen stock. So I had a successfully mated queen that tested as an H3, a Harbo 3. I do have on here that I released her in here on August 31st, and I had her in one of my little queen cages in here. So you see, I haven't been back in this hive since August. This hive had almost died due to several factors, but it was almost gone. And I went in here with a new queen, a few bees. There was no brood before, and you can see she is laying this up nicely. Before I turn on the camera, I did a quick check of the queen, and I didn't see her. But what I want you to see here is they're drawing wax. See this? This doesn't happen typically without food or a flow, and I'm not feeding this hive. So here in zone 9B, you can see the nectar is being stored. That's what we were showing on the scales that we talked about earlier. They're starting to draw wax, just making this little comb come out, and she's laying up a storm. We're not going to get to see her, it looks like, but they've got nice little corners here. I'm very happy. There's enough brood in here to definitely get them going through winter. Let me turn the window around and show the other side. And she's laying this up nicely. I don't have any evidence on this hive yet of what you would call cap and recap. In other words, I don't see any actively cap recap cells, which means they're opening and looking in the cells for mites. There are some spots in here, and spots with a hygienic Varroa-sensitive queen can mean they've pulled brood. So spotty brood patterns on a hive with a mite load because of the environment with an H3 or H4 queen can be a good sign. So this spottiness down here could be the evidence of her uncapping and her workers uncapping and then pulling brood due to mite counts. I don't know yet. I haven't done a mite check on here since she's been in here. This is going to hopefully be my Harbo 3, set it and forget it and observe. You know, there are little dimples in some of these cells, which can be an indication that they've opened them up and closed them back up. I don't know if you can see the little dimples with this resolution I'm showing you here. That is another indicator that it can be a uncapped cell. Typically though, when you're looking for the dimples need to be a slightly different color when they're recapped, and I'm not seeing that in here. So it doesn't look like we get to see the queen. She does have a pink dot on her in this hive. That's what I was marking the daughters of Corey Stevens, Missouri mite hunters. I was marking them pink just to discriminate against the queens that I had been breeding previously. I will go back to my own color mechanism using the years probably in the future once every one of my queen is bred off of my own or imported Varroa-resistant stock. So that's the condition of the observation hive, going strong, collecting nectar, drawing wax, so the flow is on. All right, I'm out in the bee lab, outside right now, and I want to show you something else I'm working on. This is something, I'm not ready to sell it or do anything like that for those of you that want it, but I'm looking to recreate something I saw on the internet being done in Europe with a pin-killed brood test. Pin-killed brood is another way of measuring the hygienic ability of a queen's workers. Hygienics and Varroa hygienics are two separate branches of hygiene. Hygiene in and of itself could be removing chalk brood, removing sick brood, just pulling them out and cleaning the cells out. For the workers to be able to smell the Varroa, it's another branch of hygiene, perhaps a subset of the larger hygienic bees. And the pin-killed brood test is essentially, the technique to manually do it is you take a pin and you manually pierce with one tiny little hole the pupa that should be purple-eyed stage and you pin with just a tiny prick so that you're not destroying the cap. You kill it, and then you do 50 or 100 cells that way, and then you measure it 6 hours, and then you measure it 24 hours, the number of those cells that the bees clean out because they smell or detect the brood that needs to be pulled out. Well, I saw an idea, and it was a device that did 50 or so at once. And I was like, I think I can make one of those. And this is what I've come up with. Mine is round, and I don't know, those of you that have tried to make round shapes out of hexagons, it's a little bit tricky. But what I've done is I've 3D printed a cap, and I put the pins, straight pins, these are just straight pins in. My cap screws on here to hold the pins in there. And I've got this labeled on the top that there are 55 pins in this circle. That's what it took for me to make a circle, was 55. 50 had a weird shape, so I just rounded to 55, I rounded up. And then a 5.1 millimeter spacing. So I designed that on my CAD programmed, and the tiny little holes, and I've got all of these pins, if you can see that. So what you're gonna do, and I'm gonna probably show you this a little bit later, is you line this up, and if your cells are 5.1 millimeters, you can make this smaller down to 4.8 if you have a small cell. You pierce, and we're gonna make a circle around it so I know what I pierced, and then I'm gonna take a picture of it so I can see how many cells were in that, because there might be 1 or 2 that have pollen in them that I want to make sure I'm not counting. And then at 6 hours, I'll check it, and then at 24 hours, I'll check it. And then you'll get a percentage of brood removed from a hive. And then that queen, in addition to a Harbo score, can get a pin kill brood test score to go with it, to measure the hygiene. You might argue that you don't need to do this if you have a Harbo test. You could argue this is easier to do than a Harbo test because you don't have to wait for essentially your mite treatments or anything to expire, because this has nothing to do with mites, other than do you have hygienic bees? Hopefully you have hygienic bees that then are Varroa sensitive hygienic, but that would take 2 tests. So a queen that has a pin kill brood test score and a Harbo score, to me, would be a little bit of a better data point on what we have genetically going on. And I just like to make things on my 3D printer, and I figured I needed something to work on and design. I'm on about iteration number 10 of this, and while I probably don't need to print any more of them, I keep finding little new tweaks and things I want to make it better just for my own. In the bottom, I've got a little sponge, and I've got some 90% isopropyl alcohol in there to clean the pins so that, when it's stored in its cap, and I've got little yeah, it just stays like that, and it'll just stay in my pocket, and then I'll do the test, and then I'll make a circle with my pen marker that I use for marking queens or something. Anyway, that's the pin kill brood test I'm working on. So if you see me doing that or talking about it, now you've got a little bit of an intro there. I have been making some things in the bee barn. I got some lids I'm making out of scrap wood. I put all these together. These are not perfect lids, but they're my lids that I make just to always have lids on hand and not necessarily have to buy them all. I've also been making inner covers for some of my nukes. That double bubble we've been talking about is good. It does act as an inner cover, but I find that the double bubble eats up the bee space on the top of the frames. And what happens is they propylize the top of those frames to the double bubble, and they trap the beetles in there. They're trapping the beetles in there because it's space they can't get into and patrol. So I'm starting to think double bubble, while it's good, it needs something to help it maintain its bee space. It's good as a generic something or another, but I'm not sure that I am in love with it here in small hive beetle country. Some of you know I am working on an experiment with the University of Florida as part of my Master Craftsman experiment, doing an experiment with chlorantraniliprole inside of the hive. It is sanctioned. I have gotten all the permissions to do it here. I have collected my data, and my results are being reviewed by my administrator, and I'll be presenting it to the Bee Lab somewhere here later on in the fall, or maybe in the next spring. But I can tell you that conclusively, it kills beetles. My control was a small hive beetle trap with nothing in it. I had a mineral oil trap right next to it to say this is a traditional method of trapping beetles in a small hive beetle trap. And then I had my chlorantraniliprole pollen-based bait going in the other one. And I can just say here, as an N of 1, I had an N of about almost 30 in this scenario. The trap with nothing in it didn't catch anything because the beetles go in and they can walk right out. The trap with the mineral oil over a 30-day period mostly had 1 or 2 beetles in it, or 0 beetles for some. The traps with the chlorantraniliprole bait in it over a 30-day period, I had up to 130 to 140 beetles in some of those traps. I think the lowest one had 30 or 40 beetles in it. So there's no doubt about it, in a single hive with 3 different options for trapping beetles, they all went to the bait and the bait killed them. And the bait is kept from the bees, even though it has an LD50 of very safe for bees. And we did all of that work in my paper. Anyway, just an update on there. The chlorantraniliprole thing is going a little bit further and perhaps can be commercialized. I don't know that I'm going to be the one to commercialize it, but it's an idea. And I think Lewis Bartlett's probably taking the road on this up at the University of Georgia, pursuing this chlorantraniliprole path with small hive beetles. He's probably the one to follow if you're interested on that. And he does have a couple papers out on the subject. All right, that's enough for the bee lab. Let's get into bees. This video is getting a little bit long already, and we'll just see what's going on out there today. All right, everybody, welcome back. So this is a good example of what I'm going to be doing with my queens. Oh, I wanted to tell you guys something. I've got some new gloves. You know, I still carry my thin plastic gloves that have the 12-inch sleeves to kind of go up here. These are really, really good when I got to pick up queens, or if I really need dexterity. If I'm not expecting to pick up a queen with my hands, I found these are pretty good. These are Apis Tactical. They're the most dexterous gloves I've found so far. Listen, I'm getting a little bit older. The number of stings you take can lead to the late in life onset of bee perhaps allergies. I don't want to get that one day. I don't know if I ever will. So I do barehanded beekeeping when I can, but if I'm going to get into a mess with the bees and I know I'm going to kind of be making a video and I don't want to, I'm going to put on my gloves. Apis Tactical. The cuffs are only that long, so they kind of go up underneath your sleeves. They've been working really good for me so far. I'm not sponsored by them at all. Love their product. I saw them at the bee show and I decided to try them. I still carry my other gloves. And if I am marking a queen, I always do that barehanded now. I've squished too many queens, even with those plastic gloves. In any case, that's my situation and my story. You could use those marking tools and capture her and use the plunger, but I don't do that. This is my Harbo 4 tested queen. First round Harbo. I'll do another one in the spring. I'm not going to bother doing another one now. I'm going to let them go through the winter. This one came from, I believe his name is Ryan at Sourwood Farms. This was a virgin that locally mated. And I just put her in a double in here. So what I wanted to do on this one was one of those pin tests I was telling you about. So let's open her up and kind of see. I am going to do a mite check because mite checks are easy to do if I find the queen. I don't like doing mite checks if I don't find the queen. Personal preference. A couple beetles crawling up in here, and I do have one of my traps in with my chlorantraniliprole in it. And I want to say it's not pure chlorantraniliprole. I have not released the recipe yet, and I will have to ask the state if I can. Wow, still raising drones up here. That's great news. Which also means late and fall drones are out there. If I do have a couple queens that might get superseded or something, that's good to see. I'm just looking for the queen here before I set this aside and continue on an inspection here and show you guys what I've got. If there's brood up on the top, we'll just do it up on the top. If I need to get in the bottom, I will. Cat brood here, nice little honey cap on top. Lots of brood. Do you see the little spotty nature of this? I'm okay with that if this is a hygienic queen. I'm okay with it. I cannot use spotty as an indicator anymore because I have seen them removing brood when they are finding Varroa. I'm looking at the caps. I'm looking for indications of darker dimples, which means they've recapped. Keep my smoke going over here. I don't want to completely forget being a beekeeper. So a couple of those could have been good pin tests. Lots of honey, nectar coming in. See that glistening nectar? That's the indication we're on a flow. This one could go 555. This is almost a fully capped. I mean, this is the beginning of my October flow, so I'm not exactly sure. So you see these beetles? I don't know if you can see it. There's a beetle right there, kind of walking around my trap. Now I'm going to show you my trap, just because we're getting closer to my project being complete. All nectar. All nectar. Now I'm using these reusable traps, and I'm just gonna give you an up close. This is what I've got. Can you see that? I don't know if you can or not. There are dead beetles in there. This bait kills beetles, attracts them and kills them, because it's pollen supplement based. So I've got some, there are a few secrets to get the viscosity right, to make it not dry out and some things like that. So I'm asking you, just don't go out there and start winging it yet. If I get permission from the state, I will talk about it on my channel. So here's a good example of a nice frame that they're building out, and I'm gonna put it one closer into the middle to make it towards the center a little bit more, to help them kind of work on that one versus the other ones. Gotta grab these gloves on. This is one possible downside of breeding for Varoa-Resistance, is at the beginning of my program, I'm open mating right now. I may start instrumentally inseminating after I get the training. I am going to training in March. For those of you that are interested in that, I've signed up and paid for and reserved my training at the University of Florida for instrumental insemination in March. We'll see if I go down that path, but knowing the way I am, I'll be going down that path just for fun. I know it's a little bit expensive, but as I get older and need more hobbies, that might be one I take up. Okay, so now there's a good look. I hope you can see it. Let me just double check at the camera. You can. Yeah. This bee population is doing amazing. This is a different style trap I've got in the bottom for beetles, but I don't know if you can see it. Dead beetles. Sometimes they propolize this up. It's kind of like they still got that, if the beetles go in, propolize it kind of behavior. I really want to do a mite check on this hive. They are stinging these gloves, and sometimes the gloves do hold stingers in the leather, like some leather gloves can. I'm not being very rough, so it's raining. That's probably the best reason to argue these guys are a little bit upset, is the rain. Yeah, I need to smoke them because they are kind of getting feisty on this rainy day. I may not go into too many more hives on video here if they're all going to be like this. I really don't want to upset them too much. I'm looking for Mama. I'd love to show you what she looks like. I think, oh, there she is. She's right on top. I must have shaken her off and I just saw her go down. Okay, she's 2 frames over. So I'm going to take this one right here that I know she's not on and take a shake. Look at that brood pattern though. Wow. Okay. Nice brood. We're going to do a pin kill brood test on this. No, I'm going to do it on the top so that I can get back in and check it easier. I'm going to put this back together. I know Mama's safe in the bottom. I saw her. I didn't show her you because she went down and she's happy and working hard. Now I'll put this one back on. Let me get those mites stewing. This is my solo cup with holes in the bottom of it. Mite checker I'm still using with soap. 300 plus bees. That was definitely more than 300, I think. Soapy water solution. Euthanizing the bees with a soap. A couple little shakes here and then let it set for the minute. While we're setting it, we'll do that pin kill brood test that I've never done before, so this will be the first time for me to do it with you. With bees that would rather not me be bothering them on a cloudy, rainy day. All right, we're gonna set that to the side. I'll show you the mite count. I got no problem doing that, good or bad. I think it's a Harbo 4. I've tested it as Harbo 4, but like I told you earlier, I'm new at this. No brood there. Where was the brood? It was over here. No, it was further over. Here it is. All right, so I'm gonna shake just in case Mama came up. Now, this is why, you see how I told you that when I do 55 pins, it might not line up with all covered brood? That's why you gotta take the picture. I got some rain coming. Camera has an umbrella on it. So this is my tester. This is kind of the moment of truth here. I've never done this before. I do have a hexagon on here to show me the up, because you know, if you didn't know that, bees draw hexagons with the point up. Something I didn't realize till much later in my beekeeping journey. And I'm just gonna try to put this lined up on cells that I've never lined up before. I might need to figure out if I need guides or anything further. Does it line up? I'm just gonna do it. All right, so I'm pressing it in. I think I designed it 7 millimeters down. Now I'm gonna make a pink circle that marks the circle. Not sure the best marker to use. I'm using my queen marking pen, my pink one. All right, that wasn't great, but now I'm pulling this out and I got pins in each one. Now, what I need to do now is I need to take a picture, because there are a few that already are missing holes, right? So I need to not account for those. That is the secret here, is you gotta take a picture so that when you come back, you have something to compare it against. And as I'm looking at my pinpricks, I'm gonna look at it closer inside after I put all this together and kind of analyze it. And if you noticed, when I circled it, I actually kind of pulled some caps off of some of the brood, and that reminds me I needed to check for the purple eye stage, and I'm looking at those and I think I'm good on that. Might be a little bit, they're not quite turning brown yet as far as the bodies, but their eyes are starting to turn. All right, we're gonna put this hive back together. These ladies are telling me it's a rainy day. Put my beetle trap back in, and that on. And now the moment of truth on the mites. Harbo 4 should be, it can have mites, it wouldn't be in the brood cell. So this needs to be a low mite count. If this is above 7 or 8, my Harbo 4 might be wrong. If this is in the 5, 6 or lower, I think I'm good on my testing. You know, there's some arguments to saying you can't really Harbo test without a strong mite load. And you definitely can't test if you've done treatments. And you can't test if the queen is less than 7 weeks from hatching. So there's a lot of controls. You can do that pin brood kill test a little bit quicker than you can the other ones. All right, we do have mites. I'm at 7. So I'm less than 3%. I don't know if you can see that or not. Not 0. They were 0 earlier. So this, to me, raises some questions, just to say, I'm gonna do another Harbo in the spring, no matter what, to double check my work and mite load through the winter and things like that. But mite pressure and control of the mites is what this resistance is about. It's about keeping them. So these are phoretic mites. A Harbo 4 should not allow any reproductive mites. So these are either phoretic, non-reproductive, hanging on the backs of bees, or I don't have a Harbo 4, maybe I have a Harbo 3 or something. But deep in the beginning of August, with no treatments on this since, this queen never had a treatment. I got her from Ryan, I mated her, and she's been on her own. So this hive has never had a treatment. So I'm October, whatever it is today, 5th, and I counted 7. I don't see 7 in there right now. I see about 5, but I think I counted 7. It was below 9, which is the 3% ratio. So yeah, I think, you know, with the rain, I'm gonna probably end it there. This video is getting a little bit long. It's probably about a half an hour or more. Pin kill brood test. I don't have the results yet. I gotta come back in 6 hours and I check it the first time, and then I'll check it around this time tomorrow to do a 6 and a 24, and I'll get a percentage of hygienic pin kill brood test there to go along with my Harbo 4 score. So there'll be another score on here, pin kill brood percentage or something like that. And I'll have this in tandem when I'm choosing my mating queens in the spring, about who is got the best of all the traits I'm looking for, including behavior. You know, obviously this is rainy day behavior, so I'm not gonna blame these bees right now for being a little bit buzzy. but behavior is also another thing. But hey, beggars can't be choosers. I'm gonna fight for the Harbofores before I fight for the behaviors. Everyone might not want to do that, but that's what I'm doing in my apiary. Anyway, sorry it's been so long. Welcome back. And if you're new to the channel, stick around, maybe subscribe to the channel. We'll see you next time, everybody. Have a great day.